Not.
We are live.
We are live. Hello, humans.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we could start with a bit of housekeeping and figure out our schedule.
Let's do that.
So I am really glad that we took this week off because I've been absolutely exhausted every single day.
Yeah. When you change a schedule, that makes sense.
Yeah. And looking at how my weeks are going right now, and just so we've got some more changes coming up at work. It's all kinds of stuff.
Oh, fabulous.
So my point being, what was my point going to be? I'm thinking maybe twice a week would be a better schedule for us. Oh my God,
Okay.
who's calling on my phone? Okay. So if we could do like Sunday and Wednesday, I think that would be good for me, if that works for you.
Hell yeah, it does. I don't think I have any schedule conflicts.
So the next question is what time? Because noon won't work, at least on Wednesday.
Right. What time of day works for you?
Anytime after 8, maybe after like 9 actually, so I have time to like get some dinner. I know that's a little late, but that's kind of all I got.
Yeah, no, I've got you. Like from 8 to 10, I'm busy because I read to the kids or we're watching anime together. Like that's family time. But at 10, I could do 10.
10 to 11 might be a little late.
Right? Yeah.
The other option is we could just do like a weekly on Sunday right now.
Weekly on Sunday for the time being makes sense. I'm trying to think, like between 7 and 8 would work really well for me. There's nothing going on between 7 and 8.
Yes, Sunday from 7 to 8 works great for me.
All right. But on Wednesday, no?
I don't get off work until 8.
Oh. Ugh. Yeah. All right. Sunday from 7 to 8 starting next week. And if at some point you decide to stay up till 11 or to start earlier or whatever, I'm here.
Okay. Well, earlier is not going to be an option. I'll see how I feel about staying up till 11.
Right.
But like doing something like 9 to 10 is absolutely just not going to work. I'm going to
No. Besides 9 to 10 is not available for me either.
I meant AM.
Oh. Ooh, no.
Yeah, no.
Ew, thank you. No. Gross.
Yeah.
No matter what your schedule is.
Some people like that stuff.
Alien.
I don't know why. Perhaps.
All right, we'll just do Sundays from here on in.
Cool.
Until and unless you find a different day. We could do 2 adjacent days. Do you have 2 days off or are you working 6 days a week?
No, I have 2 days off. But I don't really want to do 2 adjacent days because that, as much as I love doing this, that's a chunk of my weekend preparing for it and doing it.
Yeah.
And I have other stuff. I have a lot of other stuff I have to do.
I only wear makeup for this.
I don't wear makeup for this, but I do have a whole like setup with my laptop and my headset and all of that. So
yeah, I hear that. I don't need this so bright. That's better. All right. Chapter 7, The Mirror of Galadriel.
Oh yeah, I don't know why I'm doing this.
How is work? How's life? How's things?
Things are things. Work is really, really busy right now, and we're bringing back some people from furlough, which is really exciting, but it does mean that my whole A lot of my team is changing, so
Oh,
I have like a whole bunch of new people to meet and no, I'll not meet. I know them,
great.
but I'm going to be
Yeah.
working with a whole different group of people again for the fourth time in the last like 3 months.
Bring them up to speed, tell them what everybody already knows, etc. That's
No, they're
exhausting.
not new people. They're coming back from furlough.
Yeah, but I mean, if anything's gone on lately.
Oh yeah, well they'll get training for that. It's more that like my job involves a lot of relationship building and talking and being like, "Hey, what are you about? What do you like? How do you like to get feedback? Okay, I'll give you feedback this way. Oh, that didn't really work. Let's try this way." Like so it takes a solid probably minimum 4 to 6 weeks to get on a solid footing with a new team, and that's exactly how long I've had with my team, and now I'm going to have a new team again.
Great.
Yeah. So it's gonna be fine and all that, but it is really, really tiring. That's why I said like this week was when we found out, and then it's starting next week, and the week after that we have a new. Yeah, it's just everything.
Check. Yeah, we're doing okay. I'm just tired because the world is tiring. Uh, the Blue and Sebastian got all their wisdoms pulled, so we're having to eat a lot of soups for dinner.
At the
And
same time, poor guys.
yeah, and Brown wants to because her mouth doesn't have room for her wisdoms. She's gotten the X-rays that show that they're going to be causing problems, and she's like, "I want him out! I want him out! I want him out!" And I'm like, "Okay, fine." So that sort of thing.
Speaking as someone with a lot of scar tissue on the sides of my cheeks, it's probably better to do it early.
Right. Yeah, I'm there. And I got mine pulled one by one, like over the years. Each one would rot and then I'd get it pulled. And that wasn't the best way either. Although I
Yeah.
will say that when you do it that way, it doesn't knock you out for nearly as long. You're like you nap for a day and then you're back in business. And you have the other side of your mouth to chew on, so you don't have to be quite as careful with your face.
I mean,
However,
I don't remember too much about the recovery process from getting my wisdoms out because I got all four at once, and then they put me on some stuff, and
you were pretty much out of it for a week.
I'll take your word for it.
Kit had the same thing happen, and apparently she like marathoned some Prisoner or
I bet it
old
was.
shows, and then she didn't remember what she'd watched.
I feel like it was The Prisoner because I
Yeah.
feel like I remember this story. I watched Dr. Horrible's sing-along vlog for the first time while I was really high on Percocet after my wisdoms. It was not an ideal experience.
No. Oh God, did I tell you I saw Jojo Rabbit finally?
No,
Have you seen it?
no.
It's very good.
I have no doubt. I love Taika.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's hilarious tragedy. It's a little like Beautiful Mind.
Yeah, I can't do anything with tragedy in it right now.
No, don't do it then. Roberto Benigni and Taika Waititi really ought to like co-write and produce something because they have very similar minds.
Isn't Benini dead?
No, no, Benigni, I don't think so. Hang on, that would be so sad.
Speaking of sad, can we have a moment of silence for Sir Ian Holm?
Yes. We will miss him, but when you make it past 80, it's not tragedy. It's just glorious. Like, what a fucking phenomenal run, and I love you forever. And I'll see you at SkyCon. Nah. Ein Minuten bitte. Come on, Google, you know what I mean. Yes, I mean Roberto. Wiki. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, and the shadows were deepening in the woods when they went on again. Their paths now went into thickets where the dusk had already gathered.
Hold on a second. Are we talking about Roberto Benini or are we reading? I missed the segue.
There was none. I was waiting for Wiki to load, so I started reading.
I was like, this is the most lyrical Wikipedia article I've ever heard.
No, he's still alive.
Okay.
He's still doing his thing. He's still being an Italian director goofball thing. Or I don't know actually what he's doing. He could be crocheting for all I know, but he's alive.
Good to know.
Yes.
Speaking of the fiber arts.
Their paths now went into thickets where the dusk had already gathered. Night came beneath the trees as they walked, and the elves uncovered their silver lamps. Suddenly they came out into the open again and found themselves under a pale evening sky pricked by a few early stars. There was a wide, treeless space before them, running in a great circle and bending away on either hand. Beyond it was a deep fosse, lost in soft shadow.
Fussy, fussy, fussy.
Lost in soft shadow. Martha Graham, Martha Graham, Martha. Is it pronounced Foss or Fossy?
I don't know. I just always, in my head, when I hear that word, that's what I think of.
I only hear that word in this chapter of this book. I've never heard it used elsewhere for anything. For all I know, he invented it.
Entirely possible.
Kind of like a big green foss. Which is, where was it? Dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. Foss lost in soft shadow, but the grass upon its brink was green, as if it glowed still in memory of the sun that had gone. Upon the further side there rose to a great height a green wall. Okay, so the foss is the ditch. Encircling a green hill, thronged with malorn trees taller than any they had yet seen in all the land. Their height could not be guessed, but they stood up in the twilight like living towers. In their many-tiered branches and amid their ever-moving leaves, countless lights were gleaming, green and gold and silver. Haldir turned toward the enemy. Enemy company, sorry.
This chapter escalates really quickly.
He turned toward the company. Welcome to Carascalathon, he said. Here is the city of the Galathrim where dwell the Lord Celeborn and Galadriel, the Lady of Lorien. But we cannot enter here, for the gates do not look northward. We must go round to the southern side, and the way is not short, for the city is great.
Maybe it's just okay.
The north wall.
What?
Maybe they should have had a gate in the north wall. They've been there thousands of years and they only built one gate. That seems like poor planning. There was a road paved with white stone running on the outer brink of the foss. Along this they went westward, with the city ever climbing up like a green cloud upon their left. And as the night deepened, more lights sprang forth until all the hill seemed afire with stars. They came at last to a white bridge, and crossing found the great gates of the city. They faced southwest, set between the ends of the encircling wall that here overlapped, and they were tall and strong, and hung with many lamps. Haldir knocked and spoke, and the gates opened soundlessly. But of guards Frodo could see no sign. The travelers passed within, and the gates shut behind them. They were in a deep lane between the ends of the wall, and passing quickly through it, they entered the city of the trees. No folk could they see, nor hear any feet upon the paths, but there were many voices about them and in the air above. Far away up on the hill they could hear the sound of singing falling from on high like soft rain upon leaves. I love how poetic this is, but part of my brain is always like, it's a city. Someone somewhere is shouting. Someone is washing some dishes. Or like cursing at some livestock. Clear, there's got to be livestock. They surely keep goats or something. There's got to be. What do they drink? Dew? Like.
I mean, maybe.
I want to see all of the like the alleyways and the rubbish bins of Carascalathon.
Sounds like a great premise for a fanfic. Or just a title for a short story, The Rubbish Bins of Karas Galavon.
Maybe that's one of those places where Galadriel's magic happens. Like, people throw their rubbish into a specific, like, composter, and she manages to accelerate the composting process, so the next day it's just beautiful topsoil.
It could be.
Yeah, why the hell not? They went along many paths and climbed many stairs until they came to the high places and saw before them, amid a wide lawn, a fountain shimmering. It was lit by silver lamps that swung from the boughs of trees, and it fell into a basin of silver from which a white stream spilled. Upon the south side of the lawn there stood the mightiest of all the trees. Its great smooth bole gleamed like grey silk, and up it towered until its first branches, far above, opened their huge limbs under shadowy clouds of leaves. Beside it a broad white ladder stood, and at its foot 3 elves were seated. They sprang up as the travelers approached, and Frodo saw that they were tall and clad in grey mail, and from their shoulders hung long white cloaks. "Here dwell Celeborn and Galadriel," said Haldir. "It is their wish that you should ascend and speak with them." One of the elf wardens then blew a clear note on a small horn, and it was answered 3 times from far above. "I will go first," said Haldir. "Let Frodo come next, and with him Legolas. The others may follow as they wish. It is a long climb for those who are not accustomed to such stairs, but you may rest upon the way." Yeah, that's the thing to say to the bros of Middle Earth.
Well, not to mention, they've just been traveling for like a few weeks on extremely uneven surfaces and in Moria. I'm pretty sure they're accustomed to such stairs.
As he climbed slowly up, Frodo passed many flets, some on one side, some on another, and some set about the bole of the tree so that the ladder passed through them. At a great height above the ground he came to a wide talon like the deck of a great ship. On it was built a house, so large that almost it would have served for a hall of men upon the earth. He entered behind Haldir and found that he was in a chamber of oval shape. It's the Oval Office. In the midst of which grew the trunk of the great malor, now tapering towards its crown, and yet making still a pillar of wide girth. The chamber was filled with a soft light. Its walls were green and silver, and its roof of gold. Many elves were seated there. On 2 chairs beneath the bole of the tree, and canopied by a living bough, there sat, side by side, Celeborn and Galadriel. They stood up to greet their guests, after the manner of elves, even those who were accounted mighty kings. Very tall they were, and the lady no less tall than the lord, and they were grave and beautiful. They were clad wholly in white, and the hair of the lady was of deep gold, and the hair of the Lord Celeborn was of silver, long and bright. But no sign of age was upon them, unless it were in the depths of their eyes, for these were keen as lances in the starlight, and yet profound, the wells of deep memory. Haldir led Frodo before them, and the Lord welcomed him in his own tongue. The Lady Galadriel said no word, but looked long upon his face. "Sit now beside my chair, Frodo of the Shire," said Celeborn. "When all have come, we will speak together." Each of the companions he greeted courteously by name as they entered. "Welcome, Aragorn, son of Arathorn," he said. "It is 38 years of the world outside since you came to this land, and those years lie heavy on you." You look old, dude.
Right? Like, what a thing to say.
"But the end is near. for good or ill.
Dude,
Comforting.
Celeborn, come on.
Here lay aside your burden for a while. Welcome, son of Thranduil. Too seldom do my kindred journey hither from the north. Guilt trips too? Come on, man.
He's basically like your annoying like great aunt who's like, "Oh, good to see you. How are you? You look so healthy."
Why don't you ever call?
Exactly.
Welcome, Gimli, son of Gloin. It is long indeed since we saw one of Durin's folk in Cariscalathon, but today we have broken our long law. May it be a sign that though the world is now dark, better days are at hand, and that friendship shall be renewed between our peoples. Gimli bowed low. So that's the one person he's nice to.
Well, if you had to pick one, that's probably diplomatically speaking a good choice.
True. And maybe if Celeborn had been allowed to keep talking, actually, yeah, when he's allowed to keep talking, he puts his foot in it. So,
oh yeah, huh?
When all the guests were seated before his chair, the Lord looked at them again. Here there are 8, he said. 9 were to set out, so said the messages. But maybe there has been some change of counsel that we have not heard. Elrond is far away, and darkness gathers between us, and all this year the shadows have grown longer. Nay, there was no change of counsel, said the Lady Galadriel, speaking for the first time. Her voice was clear and musical, but deeper than woman's wont. Gandalf the Grey set out with the company, but he did not pass the borders of this land. Now tell us where he is, for I much desired to speak with him again, but I cannot see him from afar unless he comes within the fences of Lothlorien. A grey mist is about him, and the ways of his feet and of his mind are hidden from me. Alas, said Aragorn.
Oh shit.
Gandalf the Grey fell into shadow. He remained in Moria and did not escape. At these words, all the elves in the hall cried aloud in grief and amazement. These are evil tidings, said Celeborn, the most evil that have been spoken here in long years full of grievous deeds. He turned to Haldir. Why has nothing of this been told to me before? He asked in the elven tongue. We have not spoken to Haldir of our deeds or our purpose, said Legolas. At first we were weary, and danger was too close behind, and afterwards we almost forgot our grief for a time, as we walked in gladness on the fair paths of Lorien. Yet our grief is great, and our loss cannot be mended, said Frodo. Gandalf was our guide, and he led us through Moria, and when our escape seemed beyond hope, he saved us, and he fell. Tell us now the full tale, said Celeborn. Then Aragorn recounted all that had happened upon the pass of Caradhras and in the days that followed, and he spoke of Balin and his book, and the fight in the chamber of Mazarbul, and the fire and the narrow bridge, and the coming of the terror. An evil of the ancient world, it seemed, such as I have never seen before, said Aragorn. It was both a shadow and a flame, strong and terrible. It was a Balrog of Morgoth, said Legolas. Of all elf-banes the most deadly, save the one who sits in the dark tower. Indeed, I saw upon the bridge that which haunts our darkest dreams. I saw Durin's bane, said Gimli in a low voice, and dread was in his eyes. Alas, said Celeborn, we long have feared that under Caradhras a terror slept, but had I known that the dwarves had stirred up this evil in Moria again, I would have forbidden you to pass the northern borders. you and all that went with you. And if it were possible, one would say that at the last Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly, going needlessly into the net of Moria.
Celeborn, don't be a dick.
Which is what Galadriel says right here. He would be rash indeed that said that thing, said Galadriel gravely. Needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed him knew not his mind and cannot report his full purpose. But however it may be with the guide, the followers are blameless. Do not repent your welcome of the dwarf. If our folk had been exiled long and far from Lothlorien, who of the Galadhrim, even Celeborn the Wise, would pass nigh and would not wish to look upon their ancient home, though it had become an abode of dragons? Dark is the water of Keled Zaram, and cold are the springs of Kibil Nala, and fair were the many-pillared halls of Khazad-dûm in elder days before the fall of mighty kings beneath the stone. She looked upon Gimli, who sat glowering and sad, and she smiled. And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes. And it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw there love and understanding. Wonder came into his face, and then he smiled in answer. He rose clumsily and bowed in dwarf fashion, saying, Yet more fair is the living land of Lorien, and the Lady Galadriel is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth. Because of the men in this room, Gimli's the one who deserves Galadriel the most.
Well, so Gimli, first of all, is the only diplomat amongst them. Second of all, is a precious cinnamon bun. And
I love him so much.
Yeah.
I mean, and to turn on a dime like that, like so someone has just fucking insulted you and said they regret welcoming you. And then somebody else steps in and just speaks the words of the poetry of your people, and you're immediately like, I can turn a very nice phrase on that. You are my friend now, and I love you forever. Precious cinnamon bun.
Oh, Gimli.
He's so awesome. Especially when he's in the room with Galadriel.
I'm kind of glad that I saw the movies first, because if I had read the book first, I would have been really mad about how they treated Gimli in the movies, and I can be okay with it because I saw them first, you know?
It's a different Gimli. It's just a different interpretation. They couldn't have him be well, they all needed more flaws to be filmable.
I mean, yeah. Oh, I understand the rationale for it from a movie perspective, but I would have been mad.
Likewise. And, God, he's awesome. Okay, there was a silence. At length, Celeborn spoke again. Sorry, guys. I did not know that your plight was so evil, he said. Let Gimli forget my harsh words. I spoke in the trouble of my heart. I will do what I can to aid you, each according to his wish and need, but especially that one of the little folk who bears the burden. I'd love to have an opportunity to use that apology. Let them forget my harsh words. I spoke in the trouble of my heart.
That is pretty good apology.
Right? Your quest is known to us, said Galadriel, looking at Frodo, but we will not here speak of it more openly. Yet not in vain will it prove, maybe, that you came to this land seeking aid, as Gandalf himself plainly purposed. For the Lord of the Galadhrim is accounted the wisest of the elves of Middle-earth, and a giver of gifts beyond the power of kings. He has dwelt in the west since the days of dawn, and I have dwelt with him years uncounted. For ere the fall of Nargothrond or Gondolin, I passed over the mountains, and together through ages of the world we have fought the long defeat. It is it was who first summoned the White Council, and if my designs had not gone amiss, it would have been governed by Gandalf the Grey, and then mayhap things would have gone otherwise. But even now there is hope left. I will not give you counsel, saying do this or do that, for not in doing or contriving, nor in choosing between this course and another, can I avail, but only in knowing what was and is, and in part also what shall be. But this I will say to you, your quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little, and it will fail, to the ruin of all. Yet hope remains, while all the company is true. And with that word she held them with her eyes, and in silence looked searchingly at each of them in turn. None save Legolas and Aragorn could long endure her glance. Sam quickly blushed and hung his head. At length the Lady Galadriel released them from her eyes, and she smiled. "Do not let your hearts be troubled," she said. "Tonight you shall sleep in peace." Then they sighed and felt suddenly weary, as those who have been questioned long and deeply, though no words had been spoken openly. "Go now," said Celeborn. "You are worn with sorrow and much toil. Even if your quest did not concern us closely, you should have refuge in this city until you were healed and refreshed. Now you shall rest, and we will not speak of your further road for a while." That night the company slept upon the ground, much to the satisfaction of the hobbits. The elves spread for them a pavilion among the trees near the fountain, and in it they laid soft couches. Then, speaking words of peace with fair elvish voices, they left them. For a little while the travelers talked of their night before in the tree-tops, and of their day's journey, and of the Lord and Lady, for they had not yet the heart to look further back. "What did you blush for, Sam?" said Pippin. "You soon broke down. Anyone would have thought you had a guilty conscience. I hope it was nothing worse than a wicked plot to steal one of my blankets." "I never thought no such thing," answered Sam, in no mood for jest. "If you want to know, I felt as if I hadn't got nothing on, and I didn't like it. She seemed to be looking inside me and asking me what I would do if she gave me the chance of flying back home to the Shire, to a nice little hole with a bit of garden of my own." "That's funny," said Mary. "Almost exactly what I felt myself. Only, well, I don't think I'll say any more," he ended lamely. All of them, it seemed, had fared alike. Each had felt that he was offered a choice between a shadow full of fear that lay ahead and something that he greatly desired. Clear before his mind it lay, and to get it he had only to turn aside from the road and leave the quest and the war against Sauron to others. "It seemed to me, too," said Gimli, "that my my choice would remain secret and known only to myself." "To me it seemed exceedingly strange," said Boromir. "Maybe it was only a test, and she thought to read our thoughts for her own good purpose. But almost I should have said that she was tempting us, and offering what she pretended to have the power to give. It need not be said that I refused to listen. The men of Minas Tirith are true to their word." But what he thought that the lady had offered him, Boromir did not tell. And as for Frodo, He would not speak, though Boromir pressed him with questions. "She held you long in her gaze, ring-bearer," he said. "Yes," said Frodo, "but whatever came into my mind then, I will keep there."
None ya beeswax, dude.
"Well, have a care," said Boromir. "I do not feel too sure of this elvish lady and her purposes. Speak no evil of the Lady Galadriel."
So I
Said
just sometimes when I hear the word purposes, I think porpoises, and it put a really
Galadriel's army of dolphins.
the little known tree porpoise.
Yes. "You know not what you say. There is in her and in this land no evil, unless a man bring it hither himself. Then let him beware. But tonight I shall sleep without fear for the first time since I left Rivendell. And may I sleep deep and forget for a while my grief. I am weary in body and in heart." He cast himself down upon his couch and fell at once into a long sleep. They cast themselves down on beds a lot in these books, and I always picture them like, wee!
Is that not how you get onto a bed normally?
That is exactly how you get into a bed. You cast yourself into the bed.
I mean, I do.
Yeah, yeah. So that the monsters can't get my feet.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why Aragorn does it.
Look, if anyone knows about the under the bed monsters, it's Aragorn.
Right. Fling. The others soon did the same. Whee!
Like popcorn.
Kind of undercuts the gravitas, doesn't it?
Undercutting the gravitas would have been a great name for this podcast, given what we did when Gandalf died.
Ah, yeah. And no sound or dream disturbed their slumber. When they woke, they found that the light of day was broad upon the lawn before the pavilion, and the fountain rose and fell, glittering in the sun. They remained some days in Lothlorien, so far as they could tell or remember. All the while that they dwelt there, the sun shone clear, save for a gentle rain that fell at times and passed away, leaving all things fresh and clean. The air was cool and soft, as if it were early spring, yet they felt about them the deep and thoughtful quiet of winter. It seemed to them that they did little but eat and drink and rest and walk among the trees, and it was enough. They had not seen the lord and lady again, and they had little speech with the elven folk, for few of these knew or would use the western tongue. Haldir had bidden them farewell and gone back again to the fences of the north, where great watch was now kept since the tidings of Moria that the company had brought. Legolas was away much among the Galadrim, and after the first night he did not sleep with the other companions, though he returned to eat and talk with them. In with the in-crowd.
Either that or he just, found a nice elf boy to spend some time with.
Well, often he took Gimli with him when he went abroad in the land. And the others wondered at this change. Now as the companions sat or walked together, they spoke of Gandalf, and all that each had known and seen of him came clear before their minds. As they were healed of hurt and weariness of body, the grief of their loss grew more keen. Often they heard nearby elvish voices singing and knew that they were making songs of lamentation for his fall, for they caught his name among the sweet, sad words that they could not understand. Mithrandir, Mithrandir, sang the elves, O pilgrim grey, for so they loved to call him. But if Legolas was with the company, he would not interpret the songs for them, saying that he had not the skill, and that for him the grief was still too near, a matter for tears, and not yet for song. It was Frodo who first put something of his sorrow into halting words. He was seldom moved to make song or rhyme. Even in Rivendell he had listened and had not sung himself, though his memory was stored with many things that others had made before him. But now, as he sat beside the fountain in Lorien and heard about him the voices of the elves, his thought took shape in a song that seemed fair to him, yet when he tried to repeat it to Sam, only snatches remained, faded as a handful of withered leaves. When evening in the Shire was grey, his footsteps on the hill were heard. Before the dawn he went away on journey long without a word. Blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. A deadly sword, a healing hand, a back that bent beneath its load, a trumpet voice, a burning brand, a weary pilgrim on the road. A lord of wisdom throned he sat, swift in anger, quick to laugh, an old man in a battered hat, who leaned upon a thorny staff. I cut out about half of it. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken on the stone. In Khazad-dûm his wisdom died. Why, you'll be beating Mr. Bilbo next, said Sam. No, I'm afraid not, said Frodo. But that is the best I can do yet. Well, Mr. Frodo, if you do have another go, I hope you'll say a word about his fireworks, said Sam. Something like this. The finest rockets ever seen, they burst in stars of blue and green, or after thunder, golden showers came falling like a rain of flowers, though that doesn't do them justice by a long road. No, I'll leave that to you, Sam, or perhaps to Bilbo, but I can't talk of it any more. I can't bear to think of bringing the news to him. One evening, Frodo and Sam were walking together in the cool twilight. Both of them felt restless again. On Frodo, suddenly the shadow of parting had fallen. He knew somehow that the time was very near when he must leave Lothlorien. What do you think of elves now, Sam? He said. I asked you the same question once before. It seems a very long while ago. But you have seen more of them since then. I have indeed, said Sam. And I reckon there's elves and elves. They're all elvish enough, but they're not all the same. Now these folk aren't wanderers or homeless and seem a bit nearer the likes of us. They seem to belong here, more even than hobbits do in the Shire. Whether they've made the land or the land's made them, it's hard to say, if you take my meaning. It's wonderfully quiet here. Nothing seems to be going on, and nobody seems to want it to. If there's any magic about, it's right down deep where I can't lay my hands on it, in a manner of speaking. You can see and feel it everywhere, said Frodo. Well, said Sam, you can't see nobody working it. No fireworks like poor Gandalf used to show. I wonder we don't see nothing of the Lord and Lady in all these days. I fancy now that she could do some wonderful things if she had a mind. I'd dearly love to see some elf magic, Mr. Frodo. I wouldn't, said Frodo. I am content, and I don't miss Gandalf's fireworks, but his bushy eyebrows, and his quick temper, and his voice. You're right, said Sam, and don't think I'm finding fault. I've often wanted to see a bit of magic like what it tells of in old tales, but I've never heard of a better land than this. It's like being at home and on holiday at the same time, if you understand me. I don't want to leave. All the same, I'm beginning to feel that if we've got to go on, then we'd best get it over. It's the job that's never started as takes longest to finish, as my old gaffer used to say. and I don't reckon that these folk can do much more to help us, magic or no. It's when we leave this land that we shall miss Gandalf worse, I'm thinking." "I am afraid that's only too true, Sam," said Frodo. "Yet I hope very much that before we leave we shall see the Lady of the Elves again." Even as he spoke, they saw, as if she came in answer to their words, the Lady Galadriel approaching. Tall and white and fair, she walked beneath the trees. She spoke no word, but beckoned to them. Turning aside, she led them toward the southern slopes of the hill of Carascaladon, and passing through a high green hedge they came into an enclosed garden. No trees grew there, and it lay open to the sky. The evening star had risen and was shining with white fire above the western woods. Down a long flight of steps the lady went into the deep green hollow through which ran murmuring the silver stream that issued from the fountain on the hill. At the bottom, upon a low pedestal carved like a branching tree, stood a basin of silver, wide and shallow, and beside it stood a silver ewer. With water from the stream, Galadriel filled the basin to the brim and breathed on it, and when the water was still again, she spoke. "Here is the mirror of Galadriel," she said. "I have brought you here so that you may look in it, if you will." The air was very still, and the dell was dark, and the elf lady beside him was tall and pale. "What shall we look for, and what shall we see?" asked Frodo, filled with awe. "Many things I can command the mirror to reveal," she answered, "and to some I can show what they desire to see, but the mirror will also show things unbidden, and those are often stranger and more profitable than things which we wish to behold. What you will see if you leave the mirror free to work, I cannot tell, for it shows things that were, and things that are, and things that yet may be. But which it is that he sees, even the wisest cannot always tell. Do you wish to look?" Frodo did not answer. "And you?" she said, turning to Sam. "For this is what your folk would call magic, I believe, though I do not understand clearly what they mean, and they seem to use the same word of the deceits of the enemy. But this, if you will, is the magic of Galadriel. Did you not say that you wished to see elf magic?" "I did," said Sam, trembling a little between fear and curiosity. "I'll have a peep, lady, if you're willing. And I'd not mind a glimpse of what's going on at home," he said in an aside to Frodo. "Seems a terrible long time that I've been away. But there, like as not, I'll only see the stars, or something that I won't understand." "Like as not," said the lady with a gentle laugh. "But come, you shall look and see what you may. Do not touch the water." Sam climbed up on the foot of the pedestal and leaned over the basin. The water looked hard and dark. Stars were reflected in it. "There's only stars, as I thought," he said. Then he gave a low gasp, for the stars went out. As if a dark veil had been withdrawn, the mirror grew gray, and then clear. There was sun shining, and the branches of trees were waving and tossing in the wind. But before Sam could make up his mind what it was that he saw, the light faded, and now he thought he saw Frodo with a pale face lying fast asleep under a great dark cliff. Then he seemed to see himself going along a dim passage and climbing an endless winding stair. It came to him suddenly that he was looking urgently for something, but what it was he did not know. Like a dream, the vision shifted and went back, and he saw the trees again, but this time they were not so close, and he could see what was going on. They were not waving in the wind. They were falling, crashing to the ground. "Hi!" cried Sam in an outraged voice. "There's that dead Sandyman a-cutting down trees as he shouldn't. They didn't ought to be felled. It's that avenue beyond the mill that shades the road to Bywater. I wish I could get at Ted and I'd fell him." But now Sam noticed that the old mill had vanished, and a large red brick building was being put up where it had stood. Lots of folk were busily at work. There was a tall red chimney nearby. Black smoke seemed to cloud the surface of the mirror. "There's some devilry at work in the Shire," he said. "Elrond knew what he was about when he wanted to send Mr. Merry back." Then suddenly Sam gave a cry and sprang away. "I can't stay here," he said wildly. "I must go home. They've dug up Bagshot Row, and there's the poor old gaffer going down the hill with his bits of things on a barrow. I must go home." "You cannot go home alone," said the lady. "You did not wish to go home without your master before you looked in the mirror, and yet you knew that evil things may well be happening in the Shire. Remember that the mirror shows many things, and not all have yet come to pass. Some never come to be, unless those that behold the visions turn aside from their path to prevent them. The mirror is dangerous as a guide of deeds." Sam sat on the ground and put his head in his hands. "I wish I'd never come here, and I don't want to see no more magic," he said, and fell silent. After a moment he spoke again, thickly, as if struggling with tears. "No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all," he said. "But I hope I do get back some day. If what I've seen turns out true, somebody's going to catch it hot." Oh,
Yeah.
yeah! There was something I wished to mention a little earlier, but I can't remember what it was. Do 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 do. Oh, I know what I wished to say. Tolkien was no more or less racist than men of his culture and generation, but his books tended to use the races within the books as shorthand for virtues um, and lack thereof, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought before that it might be a fun exercise to use his shorthand but reverse it. If
How do you mean?
everyone if all of the orcs were pale and maggot-like and light of skin, and that's how that was a sign of their corruption, and all of the protagonists were dark of skin.
Yeah.
I can picture it in my head. I can see Galadriel as a sort of Nefertiti figure with long braids, and it still wouldn't be. It's not, his races aren't a one-to-one relationship with the races of the real world, but just because of that, it might be fun to give children of color like heroes that look like them, but they're still having this adventure. I would really like that. It would be. I don't know how many people it would piss off. Probably thousands, but
Well, I think the question is, I think I have actually, I'm pretty sure I've seen some fan art that's not dissimilar from that. I think the question is, does it have to be this exact adventure?
probably
Because there
not.
are a lot of creators of color who are making high fantasy adventure stories, and I think those are the voices that we should be finding and making sure get boosted and
Oh,
get.
yeah, that is an awesome point. I love that point. I really I really like this adventure, but if it had the same flavor, if there's anyone with that word smithery um, who could come up with phrases like the foss with the soft shadows.
Oh my god.
Shit, now I've forgotten it. What the hell was it? Do 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 do. Mm-hmm. Do 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 do. Marched on. Oh, wrong chapter. Yeah, we totally didn't. Do do do. Foss lost in soft shadow.
Oh, Jonald.
Yep. Goldberry,
Yeah, I'm
Goldberry, Yellow Barrio.
Boromir Borehorn in his gear. I'm sure there are creators out there telling these stories. I don't read a lot of high fantasy anymore, so I don't really know. Like, I'm probably not the right person to ask, but
Right.
I have zero doubts that they're out there.
I would like to read some of that if they're, like I said, wordsmiths. I can't stand reading a writer who doesn't put the right words in. It's I've said it before. I might be the world's pickiest reader because it's like, but the thing is, if they're a wordsmith and their story is kind of crap, I'll give them a pass. I know what I like.
That's important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did I tell you? They're not easy to find. They probably are easy to find online. But I spent years not owning the Johnny trilogy, the Pratchett Johnny trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, back when I found them at the library, the first one wasn't even there. So I think I found that at a bookstore, a secondhand bookstore, a few years ago. So now I had Only You Can Save Mankind.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that might have been when I got at Powell's. But anyway, last couple weeks ago at the thrift store, the kids wanted to go to the thrift store to get some cosplay shit, and we were like, okay, extra masks, extra gloves, going to the thrift store. The thrift store's half empty because now they're trying to disinfect everything before they get it on the floor. So that's really bound up their back room
I
pretty
bet.
hard. But at least they're trying. Bless their hearts. And they had the other two Johnny books for $1.50.
Awesome.
And I remembered loving them, but I didn't remember why. Oh, they're so good. They really are. They're just so, I mean, it's very simple stories, but some of the concepts and the sentences that Pratchett put together, um and have you've read them, right?
No.
There's this old bag lady that wanders through the stories that she becomes a major feature in the third book because it turns out she's a time traveler. Nobody
Thanks for
knows.
spoiling it.
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious from the get-go.
Okay.
And it's not, yeah. The surprise isn't the interesting part. Seeing how it comes together is the interesting part. But no one ever knows where she's going to turn up or how. She's pretty random. She's constantly muttering. Her name is Mrs. Tachyon.
That's very Pratchett.
Right? Oh, God. And Only You Can Save Mankind is his answer to Ender's Game.
Yeah.
And Johnny and the Dead is probably where Gaiman got his idea for the Graveyard Book. It's like Gaiman was up late one night reading Kipling and Pratchett and went, ooh. And Johnny and the Bomb is, well, time traveling and God damn, they're so good. They're so simple. They're a one-sit read. They're little novels. But it's easy to call it a one-sit read when you're willing to sit for 8 hours and read something because it's just that fucking good.
Indeed.
Yeah. Do you have any more books, by the way? I keep coming up missing I'm missing some books.
Like what?
My 2005 years best fantasy and science fiction with all of the with Two Hearts by Peter Beagle.
No, I don't read the anthologies like that. I don't think I've borrowed anything from you.
Okay. There was a couple other things, but I can't remember what they are. Something Pratchett, something Gaiman. But yeah, you
Hmm.
probably didn't.
I am
Yeah.
very annoyed, and this is
Yeah.
a very selfish annoyance, but I loaned a copy of Good Omens to someone at my work who unfortunately then got laid off. And I don't have any contact information for him.
I am very sad for your coworker. I hope he finds another job, and that's just what happens when you loan Good Omens out. We all know this to be true.
I know, but it was my loaner copy that I was like fine with not getting back, and then I realized it was actually like an older, more rare edition than my not loaner copy.
Damn it!
I know.
I know you know this story, but I'll tell it for posterity. I was at a flea market once in Paonia and found Good Omens, and I was like, sweet, a second copy. This can be my loaner copy. I shall take it home and I shall loan it next time. And I was super excited. And a friend saw me on my way out of the flea market and was like, why are you so happy? And I told her, I, I finally got a loaner copy so that I don't have to lose and rebuy my only copy of Good Omens. And she was like, good what? And I was like, this is a really good book. And she was like, never heard of it. And I was like, here.
Never saw it again.
Never saw it again.
Gotta have two copies.
Yep. Yep. At least that was my loaner copy that I never saw again. That I that I didn't get to own for more than about 2.5 minutes.
Oh, that's funny. All right, I'm gonna go,
Happy
but
breakfast. Lunch.
me. Um, I will see you next Sunday at 7.
Yay. All right.
Yay!
I love you.
I love you too.
Cuidado.
Me amas.